Welcome to Inspiration and Transformation from the Banks of the Ganga with Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, an American sannyasi living at the Parmarth Niketan Ashram in Rishikesh, India. Sadhvi is president of the Divine Shakti Foundation, a charitable organization bringing education, vocational training, upliftment, and empowerment programs to women and children. Sadhvi is also Secretary General of the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance and Director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival. Join the musings of an American sannyasi as Sadhvi shares the wisdom and teachings of her guru, His Holiness Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswatiji.
Welcome everyone to Inspiration and Transformation from the holy banks of the sacred Ganga River in the land of Rishikesh, India. There were a lot of challenges. Some of the challenges had to do with adaptation, as in things were completely different than what I was used to. And some of the challenges had nothing to do with cultural adaptation and everything to do with the mind of my own ego. As I was saying to the woman who asked the earlier question, just because you decide to join an ashram, just because you may have, as I had, a deeply powerful, transformative experience of spiritual connection, of awakening, of whatever word you may use to describe it, that does not mean you're done. Sadly. It doesn't mean that in that moment, every mental habit, every sanskara, every programming, every aspect of your psyche suddenly gets washed away and, you are anger-free and desire-free and ego-free. It would be great if a deep spiritual experience were that kind of a package deal. It's much more such a powerful experience of the truth that it transforms how you understand yourself, and therefore it becomes that which you always want to get back to experiencing. But yeah, I remember I had been here, I don't know, maybe a year or so, approximately, give or take a few months, and someone said something, not directly to me, but to someone else that got back to me. And I was really upset, worked up, really upset, in a sort of how dare she type of thing. And I finally took it to Pujya Swamiji, because I was suffering. I didn't take it to him as a story of she did this, but I took it to him as in, I'm suffering. My peace is nowhere to be found because I'm so stuck in this mental game of what I've been told, so-and-so said. And he looked at me and he said, "You are the stupidest smart person I've ever met." When I first met him, I was shocked to discover that he even knew what Stanford University was. I had no idea that he was this very famous, internationally beloved and revered leader. I had no idea. I walked in and had darshan of this incredible being who in my mind was just this amazing divine being sitting in this incredible corner of the world. The fact that he also traveled to America and had founded temples, and I had no idea. So when I found out that he actually knew what Stanford was, and he knew what a Ph.D. meant, and he knew all of these things that seemed to me to be from such a totally different world, I was really shocked. But yeah, so he says to me, "You are the stupidest smart person I've ever met." He said, "How could you be that smart and be this stupid? How could you so willingly, voluntarily let go of truth? that you know is true. You've spent the last all of these months living in this truth. Nobody came inside you and surgically removed it. You weren't drugged or literally hit on the head unconscious. You have voluntarily given up your peace, your truth, for some random nothing. My God, kisne kya kaha kisko, really? And as I've found with him over the years, when he simply in these one-liners points out the truth, all of the illusion just dissipates in that moment. And so him just saying that made it go away. But yeah, I mean, and that was, I would love to say, yeah, that was the last time anything like that happened. But it wasn't. It wasn't even close. So there's lots of challenges. Whatever path in life we choose. Because the mind is always there. And so whether it's the mind having, cultural issues, which actually by God's grace, adapting to the culture was really easy. Really, really, really easy for me. Really by God's grace, that came really easily. But adapting to working with my mind, adapting to having a guru who is a mirror of truth and not an aider and abetter of the games of my own psyche. We get so used to having people in our lives literally be enablers of our own way of thinking. Yeah, of course you should be upset. My God, kya samasya hai apne aap ko? Chalo main baat karunga. Right? I mean, so many people in our lives, meaning well, aiming to make us happy, aiming to make us feel supported, actually are just enablers of our own disease. But having a guru who was not an enabler, who was not going to sit there and say, oh, yeah, oh, you poor thing, that was such a mean thing for her to say. Come here and cry in my lap. I mean, he was not going to go there. And those were challenges. Because when you're used to having had your ego stroked and massaged, and so the challenges were much more that. Being celibate is a challenge. Being a disciple is a challenge. Being a woman in essentially a man's world is a challenge. But those are the types of challenges that whatever path we choose in life, there's choices that we have to make. And we always have to adapt and learn and change. I mean, that's what life's about. It's about growing into the choices that are right for you, whether you choose a path of monasticism or you choose a path of marriage. Either way, it's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of adaptation. There's a lot of working with your ego, working with your patterns. But to say, well, I don't want to be a monastic, but I also am not going to get married because I don't want either. Janjit mein nahi padna hai. Well, then you lose on some level the opportunity to actually work with the ego on that deep level. And it doesn't mean that you have to actually take official vows of renunciation. But there needs to be, I think, in our own lives, not hanging out in limbos, where we do make choices, we do make decisions, we move forward on a path, that calls to us, that speaks to us, that feels like our Dharma, even when it's full of challenges. Because in those challenges are when we have the opportunity to learn, really learn, and open ourselves up. When I remember, tying a sari was a challenge. And when I first came, I decided I loved how saris look, and I was going to learn to tie a sari. And if hundreds of millions of Indian women, many of whom were totally illiterate, could do it every day, well, I was going to figure out how to do it. And I tied them very badly. And I found myself, as I would walk through the ashram, through the street, through different places, that random women would come up to me and fix my sari. And I remember the first time it happened, I was actually walking through the marketplace, like up toward Ramjula. And this random woman came up to me, and when I first used to wear saris, instead of doing it like this, I did, the full-on folded way, and then you safety pin it up. And she comes up to me, and she literally sticks her hands in here and pulls at my pleats and fixes them, and then sticks her hand in here into my blouse and fixes these, and then sort of assesses me and walks on. And I stood there like I have been assaulted. I have been violated, like that woman just stuck her hands in my underwear. I don't know her, she didn't ask. And I held on to that for several hours, just kind of moving through the world with this relatively mild form of PTSD, but, nonetheless, PTSD anyway, I can't believe it. And a few hours later, I finally realized that woman actually did to me exactly the same thing that she would have done to her daughter if her daughter was walking out of the house in a very badly tied sari. And that rather than being assaulted and violated, I had actually just been adopted. And that if I could shift my own mindset from feeling like I'd been violated to feeling like I'd been adopted, living in India was going to be much easier. Because as you know, there isn't the same sense of personal space like we have in America. If you've tried to sit in the Ganga Arati anytime recently, right, you realize, especially when things are really crowded, that which to those of us from the West feels like my space, to an Indian looks like a whole other place for a whole other person. And you'd be sitting down next to somebody who was, say about kind of the distance between me and this pillow. And to me, I've just got enough space between me and the two people, on both sides of me. And then someone would come down and think that this was a space. And their knees are in my lap. And again, it's the same situation. Either you've been violated or you've been adopted because that person has just essentially assumed that you are a family member, and therefore having her knees or arms or handbag or baby or whatever it is that's now in your lap is a perfectly okay thing to do. So when we have to adapt, we really grow. I was raised an only child, so I really had a lot of personal space. I never shared a room, I never shared a bed, but I really had a lot of personal space growing up. And suddenly, there's no space. And then you adapt. And what ends up happening is you expand to an awareness that actually everybody is your family. And how beautiful. And the fact that everybody says, bye or Ben or Didi or Chacha or whatever they say next to your name. That you're the sister or the brother or the aunt or the uncle. That's really how the culture operates. So all of the challenges, monkeys in the trees, for example, package deal of life in India. You adapt. Yeah, cows, whatever it may be. And in the adaptation, you realize that you're not actually nearly as fragile as you thought you were. That actually you don't really need quite so much space. That you don't really need things to be quite exactly as you want them to be. And that there's a way of letting go into the flow of the universe.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. Om Times Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Alaya, in the circle on Sunday 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Hi, this is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Every 2 minutes, another American is sexually assaulted. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you are not alone. Help is just a call or click away through the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Please call 1-800-656-HOPE, that's HOPE, or visit RAIN.org, that's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
Welcome back to Inspiration and Transformation. I'm so glad to have you all back here with me.
There's always been the deep presence and power of the divine feminine. I mean, Hinduism, Sanatan Dharma, is a tradition that has always worshipped the divine feminine. Whether you look at mantras, if you look at the actual mantras that we chant, we say, Tvameva Mata. Chapita Tvameva. You are, oh God, you are the mother. Then you are the father, you are the guru, you are the friend. When we pray at the end of Arati and we say, Dharti Mata Ki Jai, Go Mata Ki Jai, Ganga Mata Ki Jai. It's all Mata, Mata, Mata. It's all Mother. Mother Earth, Mother Nature. It's all Mother. If you look at the actual language, unlike English, Hindi's got words that are masculine and feminine, like Spanish or French or so many other languages. And the word for creation, Shrishti, feminine. The word for nature, Prakriti, feminine. The word for the energy of creation, the energy of everything, the energy of creation, sustenance, dissolution, the energy of everything that the divine does, Shakti, feminine. So the creation itself is feminine. Nature that has been created is feminine. The energy with which it is created, sustained, dissolved, feminine. When we pray to God and take God's name, we take the female first. We say Lakshmi Narayan. We say Sitaram, we say Radha Krishna. So it's actually a culture in which, from the core, from the essence, from the beginning, although we say it's eternal with no beginning, there has been a reverence of the divine feminine. Not only do we worship Durga, Saraswati, Kali, Lakshmi, Gayatri, all of the forms of the Mother Goddess, but we also have these days, 18 days a year, 9 in the springtime, 9 in the autumn, dedicated exclusively to the worship of the Mother Goddess. I don't actually know of any other tradition like that. So it's there. The dilemma that has happened across the world over, I don't know whether it's been hundreds or thousands of years. I'm not a sociologist or historian in this way or anthropologist in this way. But I would imagine that it's been, and I'm just guessing here, but I would imagine that it's been since days of hard labor work where it wasn't something that women could necessarily do as well as men. That there's been perhaps a sense of not just division of labor, but that which over time became more of something that's seen as a hierarchy. It's better if you are a man because then you can do this. And if you're a woman, you can't, and therefore that is lesser. I would imagine that that has creeped into our society around aspects of that. But again, I don't know. I don't know how or when it arose, but I know that it's not part of the core teachings. What's happened over the last many, many, many decades, but even going back even before the last century, where with women getting the right to vote, is there have been movements. There have been movements around equality. There have been movements around, whether we say feminism or whatever word we may use, but words around the awareness that this actually isn't right, and it's not right in society. And slowly, 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 we're seeing change. And as we're seeing change in our societies, we're seeing also change in how people worship spiritually. Now, again, this is not true with ancient and indigenous traditions. It's not true in Hinduism. They've never stopped worshiping the divine feminine. It's not true in the indigenous religions anywhere in the world. But in our more, Western societies, culture meets religion, where there's been suppression and subjugation and oppression, as women are rising in society, simultaneous to it, and I don't know if it's causational or they just go together, there's been also a beautiful rise in people looking for an aspect, an embodiment of the divine that is feminine. And that's beautiful, because here's what's interesting. The divine feminine is not only present in the bodies of actual females, it's present in everyone. So when we talk about the need for the rise of the divine feminine, it's not just a rallying call for women of the world unite. It's a rallying call to recognize the power of that Shakti, of that feminine energy that exists in all of us. Maybe it's a little bit more available, pronounced, accessible in women, but not always. There's a lot of men who are deeply connected to their divine feminine, a lot of women who are not. Because the divine feminine energy is an energy that is not only different, but it's an energy that's critical. And so we are great proponents of worship of the divine feminine, both from a spiritual level, in terms of prayers and pujas and ceremonies and whatnot, but also in terms of the actual women and girls in human bodies here on earth as embodiments of that. And so the work around gender equality, around empowerment, around all of that for women. Because they do go hand in hand. You know, as we remind people every Navaratri, when you worship Mother Durga, Ma Durga or Ma Saraswati, Ma Lakshmi in the mandir, and then you come home and you abuse your wife or your daughter or your sister or the women in your company or the women in the community. Do you really think that the Mother Goddess is answering your prayers? Like, do you think that Ma Durga is saying, oh, wow, great puja? Don't you think she knows how you are treating her in the form of your wife, of your daughter? And so we're really vocal advocates for the awareness that the Mother Goddess whom we worship in our temple also exists and lives in our mothers, in our sisters, in our daughters, in our wives, in the women in our community. And that's why it's so important to respect them, to honor them, to celebrate them, and to celebrate differences. Not to celebrate their ability to become like men, not to celebrate their right to be like men, but to celebrate the women that they are and how that's different from what our men give us. So yeah, it's happening. It's happening spiritually and it's happening in the world, but it definitely needs all of us together.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation.
Why do people gossip? My mother-in-law is like a character from some TV show. She sits down and the first words out of her mouth are always something like, well, you won't believe what Neeraj said to your father yesterday. Or, can you believe what Ritu was wearing in a temple? If I sit back and just observe, it's really funny. But sometimes the gossip isn't this mild. Why do people do it? Well, we gossip for a lot of reasons. First of all, sadly, a lot of people are afraid of silence. And when they don't have anything else to say, there's always gossip. One of the real tragedies is that we see silence as empty. And there's that anxiety, oh my God, who's going to say something? Who's going to say something? I should think of something to say. What if they don't say anything? Oh my God, they're going to think I'm really boring. And so we sort of rack our brains for anything to fill that space. And a lot of times it's nonsense. Sometimes it's gossip. Sometimes it's just nonsense chatter. Sometimes it's oversharing. We kind of do anything to just fill the space. We also gossip because on some very deranged level, it makes us feel closer to the people we're talking to. That somehow if I say to you, oh, did you know what this one said? I couldn't believe it. What do you think? My God, she's the worst, right? Well, it creates this really false sense of closeness between us. That now we've got this sort of twosome huddle. But it's a very false and very shallow form of connection. Because it's grounded only on being negative about others. Which means after I tell you about this thing, I better think of something else to tell you so that we can stay connected. So that's another reason that people gossip, is for that sense of closeness. If I want to feel close to you, I may try to think of some kind of juicy thing to tell you or some kind of critique about someone else. Because for some, again, kind of deranged reason, it seems like a shortcut to us feeling close. And I think the third reason people gossip, I'm sure there's probably more, but 3 occur to me at the moment, is as a defense mechanism against themselves actually having to open and be real. Because if you take the case of the mother-in-law of the questioner, sitting down together, well, if she starts with just, oh my God, this one and that one and this one and that one, and you won't believe this and you won't believe that. Did you see this? Did you see that? Well, it fills up the space so that there's no necessity for the two of you to actually have to just sit in each other's presence. And sometimes when we are uncomfortable to be vulnerable, when we don't want to be vulnerable, we don't want to open up, we don't want the possibility that you might actually ask me how my day was, or ask me how I am and really want an answer, a real answer. Or God forbid, you might start to talk about something actually real and meaningful that would require me to open up and connect with you in a deep and vulnerable way. We just fill the space with shallowness. But satsang is always focused as much as we can on us and not on others. So rather than why do others gossip, let's look at what can we do, both to stop ourselves from engaging in useless, energy-wasting chatter, and also to get ourselves out of that situation if we find ourselves in it. So if you are a gossip, if you find yourself that you are doing it, it's okay. Don't hate yourself, don't feel badly. But ask yourself, why? Like, what's my impetus here? What was I feeling before I started telling that story? What was going on? Try to work backwards. Eventually you'll get to the place where you'll be able to catch yourself before you do it. But at least from now, at the end of the day, as you're doing your introspection or whenever you sit for contemplation, ask yourself, what was going on? What was the trigger that led me to suddenly start unnecessarily bad-mouthing this other person who really hadn't done anything to me, except maybe wore something that I didn't particularly like to a party, to the temple, God forbid, the same sari they wore last week. Like, they didn't do anything to me. What instigated me to start that? And really just ask yourself, was I feeling disconnected, alone, lonely? Was I looking for some false connection and grabbed onto that? Was there too much silence and I was feeling bored? Worried that there was nothing to fill the silence, nothing to fill the space, worried that the person would think I was boring and end the conversation. Or am I subconsciously protecting myself from being vulnerable? Am I closing myself off to that relationship, preventing myself from having to really open up? Ask yourself, what was I feeling? What did it do for me? And then as time goes by, as you find yourself doing it, even if you're in the middle of a sentence, just stop. Just stop. Check in. What's going on? Because we learn so much from these behaviors of ours, of what triggers us. And if you find yourself in a situation where someone else is gossiping, feel free to say, I'm so happy to be having a conversation with you. I'm so happy to be together, but I really try not to fill up my mind unnecessarily with gossip. Can we talk about something else? And just shift the conversation. Don't criticize the person. Don't say, my God, stop gossiping. You're driving me crazy. But just humbly suggest, ask them, can you talk about something else? Let them know you're trying to protect your very precious brain space. And slowly, slowly, people themselves may not necessarily stop gossiping, but at least they will stop gossiping to you. And if you don't necessarily want to say that, if you feel uncomfortable saying that, well, you can just try to shift the conversation. Shift it to something deeper. Next time your mother-in-law starts saying, my God, you won't believe this, just ask her, hey, how was your day? How was your day? Or begin by saying, God, you know what? I've been meaning to tell you. And share something. Share something deep, share something interesting. And just shift the conversation. Because just like we need to protect our physical immunity, our spiritual immunity, like we are careful about the food we eat, the water we drink, the air we breathe, we've got to be really careful about what we take in energetically. And gossip, especially negative gossip, being happy for someone, it's still gossip, but at least it's not negative. Oh my God, they look so great together. Aren't they so cute? Oh, I hope they get married. It's so sweet. It's still gossip. It's still unnecessary, but at least it's not filling you with negativity. You got to be really careful of your energy. Protect it. Take that into your hands, just like you wouldn't eat, junk food that someone gave you. Well, don't take in the junk conversation. Shift in.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation.
Is a guru necessary? Do we really need a guru? Or can we just attain liberation, awakening, enlightenment through just these paths of devotion, bhakti, and karma and gyan? Can we just use the paths without a guru? In theory, since enlightenment, moksha, awakening, God realization, self-realization is all here, we don't need anyone or anything else. Self-realization is realizing my own self, realizing God. Well, we are one with God. In theory, we don't need anyone or anything. The problem is that life is not theoretical. And in practice, in actuality, the dilemma is that we've all got this thing called ego. An ego works very well and very hard and very tirelessly to take us off the track. It's not evil. It's not trying to ruin us. It's just got its own attachment to the status quo of how the ego understands myself. So every time that I try to say, for example, to realize, for example, I am not my body. I am not my thoughts. I am not my emotions. Well, the ego is right there saying, yeah, you better be angry. My God, did you hear her? That was so rude. Tomorrow we'll show her. Who does she think she is anyway? Yeah, of course you've got a right to be mad. You better be mad. You're not a doormat. In fact, tonight at dinner, I think I'm going to tell everybody what she did. Nobody should be friends with her anymore. Now, it's very difficult to attain moksha when thoughts like that are flooding your mind. When I tell myself I'm not my body, But I go to parties, to weddings, to events. And as I look around, I see everyone who's so much more beautiful than I am. They're wearing nicer clothes. They dance better. They mingle better. They're much more popular than I am. Look, they crack jokes. And then I go home feeling like I'm kind of a bit less than. Because I'm not so attractive, my clothes aren't so nice, I'm not such a good social butterfly. So it's very, very difficult to experience self-realization when you're feeling awful about the few pounds that you put on over the holidays, or you're feeling awful that you don't have new clothes, or that you didn't have a good joke to tell at the party. And so the problem is that the ego just keeps coming and detracting us, keeps sending us off on different paths. And it keeps telling us that those paths are right. Next time we're going to wear the nice clothes. Next time everybody's going to be looking at us. Yeah, right? So the ego's got a completely different agenda, a completely different goal. A completely different idea of what a successful evening would look like. Right? To the ego, a successful evening is you're the one everyone's jealous of at the party. But that's Maya. That's the opposite of moksha. That's illusion. So spiritually, a successful evening would be that I spent as many moments as possible aware that I am soul, that I am spirit, and that I was able to see soul, spirit in others, that when I met others, I met them on a level of soul, spirit. That every time my mind started to see object, to judge, to grab, to push away, that I was able to free myself from that thought. That, to the spiritual self, would be a successful evening. But you see, they're kind of diametrically opposed. So where the guru comes in is when you are in the throes of, oh my God, how dare she? Or, I'm never going to have any friends, or any of that. The guru is the one who comes in and metaphorically slaps you. You know, like a potter with a big lump of clay on a wheel. Could a lump of clay become a beautiful piece of art on its own? Sure, of course, theoretically. I mean, it's all clay. Could roll the right way, hit up against the right rocks, experience different aspects of erosion over many, many hundreds or thousands of years, and get dried in the sun. Sure, why not? Get a piece of it pulled away by one animal, a piece, molded by another animal. It could happen, in theory. But most of the time, when you want to make something out of a lump of clay, you need a potter. You're not going to just leave it there and hope that something beautiful comes out of it. You're going to have a potter put it on a potter's wheel, and the potter is going to spin it around and slap it into shape. And that, in many ways, is what the guru does. And if you've ever done any kind of ceramics, what you know is as you do it, sometimes the clay gets a little wet and it starts to kind of ooze off this way, and you've got to really hit it to keep it on the wheel, or it's going to end up on the floor. And we're kind of like that in life. The ego takes over. Some past pattern takes over. Some desire takes over. grudge or fear takes over, and we literally sort of start oozing over in this direction, and we're just about to actually fall over. And the guru comes in, whack. Not physically for most of us, thankfully. Pujya Swamiji was whacked physically by his guru, but it's not his way of teaching. And so metaphorically, they come in and they whack you. As in, don't go astray. Don't fall off. Stay on track. You're becoming something. Stay on track. There's more to this lump of clay than you realize. So if you didn't have an ego, or if you had great, great, great control over your ego, and you had a lot of clarity, and you never found yourself dragged away or swept up by Maya, or whenever you did, you were able to notice it right away, really quickly, and bring yourself back, then no, in theory, you wouldn't need a guru. But that's not most of our stories. Most of our stories is we get wrapped up in our own stories. We believe our own stories. We believe our own dramas. And our whole lives get absolutely wasted. If you say to most people, and if you go around the room and you say, okay, how are you feeling today? And everybody who says, I'm feeling great and happy, you remove them. You take everybody else. Everybody who gives any answer ranging from frustrated or bored or angry or in despair or sad or whatever it may be. And then you say to them, okay, why? What is the source of your trouble? Almost every single one of them is going to blame someone else or some situation. This person treats me like this, does this, acts like that, belittles me, undermines me, rejects me, insults me, humiliates me, ignores me, or worse, abuses me. This is why. Every one of us that's living in anything other than I am full of joy has got someone else to blame or some story, some circumstance of why we are like that. This is why we need a guru. Because it's the guru who's going to show us, yes, they may be like that. Yes, they absolutely may have spoken to you like that, acted like this, but your choice of how to respond, your choice of your inner response is up to you. How much you want to identify as the one who was ignored, belittled, embarrassed, rejected? Or do you want to identify as consciousness, as divinity, as love? But most of the time it takes a guru to really help us remember that. So, again, in theory you could do it, but if you're asking my very specific advice, could you be in absolute perfect health without any form of doctor or nutritional consultant or Ayurvedic Vedya or wellness coach or anything? Sure, in theory, you might have just that perfect instinct, knowing exactly what to do, exactly when to do it, exactly how to do it. But for most of us, it really helps to have someone who knows what they're doing. To have someone who can say, it's because when you eat these things together, or when you sleep at that time, or eat at that time, or do this, this is how it impacts your body. This is why you have these symptoms. So in the same way, on a deep spiritual level, it really helps to have someone who can see in the darkness and who can then shine the light for all of us. And why not?
This brings to a close this hour of inspiration and transformation. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad to be together with you all each week, and I look forward to being together again next Thursday, same time, on Om Times Radio.